Did you think the playoff committee got it right last night? In 30 seconds or less.
They were very close to my predictions, so I'll say yes.
Okay. Fair enough.
It depends on what you're asking. Do I feel like they got their rankings right based on what I truly think are the 4 best teams in college football? Honestly, no. Do I think they could have done a worse job? Yes. Do I have a lot of problems with how this is laid out? Also, yes. Luckily, a lot of this is going to take care of itself over the next few weeks, but I don't like the message that some of this is sending, truthfully.
The message being that if you're not a Power 5 school, you can't be part of the playoff?
That. Things like...
Which, by the way, we've said 1,000 times.
Right, and it's going to continue this year. What I especially didn't like I'm fine with the rankings being this way, except for this, when he was asked about Cincinnati being number 6. And honestly, if you made me guess, I don't think Cincinnati's better than Ohio State or Oregon or Alabama. I really don't. I don't think they are. But when his justification for Cincinnati being below Ohio State, for example, was Cincinnati has a good one at Notre Dame, but who have they played? Was what he said. He did that they ain't played nobody thing. Well, Ohio State, who have they played? Ohio State has played the best team on their schedule at home, and they lost to Oregon. Cincinnati went on the road to their ranked number 10 team in America and won the game. And they have not lost any others. Why is it now suddenly Ohio State's got this great resume compared to that of Cincinnati? Cincinnati's got a better win. They don't have a loss yet. It's that kind of stuff. If you were just to say out loud, we think Ohio State right now is playing better football than Cincinnati, I'm good. Yeah, they look fantastic right now. But when you say Cincinnati's not played anybody, you're full of crap because they went to Notre Dame and won, and that's your number 10 team in America. Ohio State lost to Oregon and have not beaten anybody worth a crap since. So the justification is what bothers me.
Okay. Yeah, the formula that they come up with, it's sort of like a buffet. They take a little of this and a little of that and a little of this, and they put it all on the plate, and that's how it comes out. It's there's some strength of schedule, and there's some how they're playing right now, and there's some eye tests, and there's some quality wins versus bad losses, but there's nothing uniform about it. They just sort of pick and choose as they want to go.
It is subjective.
Yeah, very. But they won't tell you that.
There are no rules. There are lots of tools. There are lots of the tools in the toolbox for the committee to analyze the teams and simulate matchups and go head-to-head and look at data points after data points after data point. But ultimately, they vote, and they try to convince each other of, what needs to be convinced. Here's the top 25. Starting at 25 and working toward 1. Pittsburgh, San Diego State, Fresno State, Iowa, Wisconsin. Wisconsin at 5-3 checks in at number 21. Haydad said yesterday would not be surprised if Mississippi State was number 25 in the poll. Well, Mississippi State was not number 25 in the poll. Minnesota at 20. NC State at 19. Kentucky at 18. Mississippi State at 17. All right, let's pause just for a second because there are a couple of things to point out. Number 23, Fresno State has beaten number 24, San Diego State. Head-to-head mattered. Wisconsin just beat Iowa. Head-to-head mattered. Mississippi State in front of Kentucky, who they just beat, and NC State, who they beat earlier in the year. And so the Bulldogs at 5-3 in front of 2 6-2 teams. Ole Miss at number 16, one spot ahead of Mississippi State. Egg Bowl could be fun.
Thank you, content gods.
Yeah, my apologies, guys, on the video stream. The internet just crapped out. I'll have to reset the thing in the break. If you're watching and I'm completely locked up on C Spire.
Oh God, Richard just took his shirt off.
Maybe it's a better look anyway. I don't know, but yeah. BYU at 15, Texas A&M at 14, Auburn at 13. Those two teams play each other this weekend. Now, Baylor at 12, Oklahoma State at 11. We okay with that? Baylor and Oklahoma State have played each other. Oklahoma State beat Baylor in the head-to-head, and so two one-loss teams right there together.
Yeah.
So that gets you through number 11. Now, 10-1. Notre Dame at 10. They have one loss this year. It is to Cincinnati. Undefeated Wake Forest at 8-0.
I am talking out of both sides of my mouth here. On one hand, I actually agree with their spot. I think they're good. I think it's a good story. They're not particularly impressive. It's a good football team, but they're perfectly fine where they are. Yeah. But like I said yesterday, if you took Clemson and gave them the identical schedule that Wake Forest has with identical results, same scores, same schedule, where would Clemson be ranked?
Certainly in the top 4.
Definitely in the top 4. And so that's why their messaging is.
Although, I say that, Borky, and I think I believe that. But wouldn't you say the same thing about Oklahoma, who is one spot in front of Wake Forest? Traditionally, you would think undefeated Oklahoma, don't care how they got there, don't care who they played, don't care what it looked like. Undefeated Oklahoma at 9-0, they're in the top 4. And yet this year, we find Oklahoma at number 8, one spot in front of Wake Forest at 9, and probably about where they should be. So maybe this year it would be different.
Maybe it would. They have gone through a quarterback change, though, and have been largely unimpressive all season. When I saw Wake Forest being there, there's no way Clemson would be there. They would receive benefit of the doubt, which they claim is not given, but it's okay if you do give it.
Yeah.
So don't tell us there's no preconceived notions. If there wasn't, Alabama wouldn't be number 2 right now.
There's some name
so just
brand
be
value.
honest. We gave Alabama the benefit of the doubt because we believe we know who they are.
Michigan at 7, Cincinnati at 6, which says to me, without absolute chaos in front of them, there is no path to the playoff for undefeated Cincinnati. Ohio State at 5, Oregon at 4, Michigan State at 3, Alabama at 2, Georgia at 1. Plenty of time to sort it out. We'll start when we come back on Sports Talk Mississippi. Sports Talk Mississippi, streaming at supertalk.fm. If you want to be part of the conversation, C-Spire text line 601-879-4395. All right. So we've got the top 25. Georgia at 1, Alabama at 2, Michigan State at 3, Oregon at 4, Ohio State 5, Cincinnati 6. Tell me why that is right, and tell me why it's wrong.
I don't know that I can't tell you that it's wrong. It might be right. I mean, I definitely think, Michigan State, Ohio State, it feels like we're splitting hairs, right? For me, I feel like you could say 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I don't really, you can't really get me to go one way or the other. Oregon, I mean, they have the best win.
They beat Ohio State in Columbus, period. They beat them in Columbus.
They have the best win of anybody in college football.
And maybe one of the worst losses. Their loss to Stanford is not a good loss. Stanford's
a
very average football team.
It is, but I think when you take into account that their offensive coordinator didn't coach in that game, who's, sort of been, Moorhead has been a guy this year who's gotten a lot of credit for what they've been doing, and they were missing a couple of starters in that game. I think the committee looks at that and goes, at full strength, Oregon is a top 4 team. So, Michigan,
They were missing
Ohio
starters
State.
when they went to Columbus and they won. They just played really bad against a very average football team.
I think, obviously Ohio State and Michigan State's going to sort itself out. And then we'll see what happens with Cincinnati. I mean, I just look at Cincinnati and I think, okay, they need Michigan State to lose. They need Ohio State to lose another game somehow. They really need Michigan to lose another game. They need Oklahoma to lose a game. They probably need Wake Forest to lose a game, to be totally honest with you. I just don't see the path for them. I know my buddy Brandon Walker on his show said that he sees a path. I do not agree with him. I don't see how they get there.
I mean, for them to get there, everybody has to lose. Everybody.
Well, but we're not talking about getting them to 1.
No, getting them to 4.
No, but I don't see them getting to 4.
No, I agree. But if they've only got to jump 2 spots, let's say Alabama loses in the – are you worried about them not getting in undefeated over 2 lost teams? Because if you're worried about them not getting in over 2 lost teams – okay, the discussion gets really difficult.
I think
they're
good. I think they're good over 2 lost teams. I do.
I don't, because Alabama. If Alabama runs the table, goes to the SEC championship, and loses by a touchdown, they get in over Cincinnati.
You're right. Alabama is the 2 lost team they should worry about. But 2 lost Michigan State or Oregon, right. I think Cincinnati is okay. They could get in. But then the other thing is to remember is, who are winning these games? Michigan is going to play Ohio State. Ohio State and Michigan State are going to play each other. Oklahoma State is going to play Oklahoma. They could jump into this mix. Baylor, I think, has already played Oklahoma State, but they have to play Oklahoma still. Auburn is a team, we talk about 2 losses. They could win the West somehow and get in to play Georgia. I don't think they would beat Georgia, but I'm just saying they could be a problem. There's a lot of scenarios, and I don't see a lot of those scenarios ending with Cincinnati in the top 4.
Because they only have to move up 2 spots, but if Oklahoma runs the table, they will not be behind Cincinnati. It won't happen. They absolutely will not pick an undefeated Cincinnati over an undefeated Oklahoma. That won't happen.
Bubba brings up an interesting point. He said Alabama was not punished for a loss to at the time an unranked team in Texas A&M. You're right. And it's kind of interesting how we do that. We don't look at where a team was when they met another team. We look at where they are now. So Alabama is getting credit for a win over number 14 Texas A&M. Texas A&M is number 14 largely because of their win over number 2 Alabama. Cincinnati is not getting credit for the fact that Indiana was a decent team when they played them, or was a ranked team when they played them. Mm-hmm. That's being looked at as not a good win because Indiana is a dumpster fire this year. Cincinnati is getting credit for their win over number 10 Notre Dame.
On the road.
North Carolina State wasn't ranked when Mississippi State beat them, but State is getting credit for beating them as a ranked team.
Yeah, and 2-3 doesn't matter much. 2-3 does not matter much at all, and this will work itself out with Michigan State having to play Ohio State still on their schedule. However, when you look at what they are, and not what you think they are, not what you thought they were, but what they are, Alabama has a loss on the road, and who's their best win? Ole Miss. That's their best win.
Their second best win is Mississippi State.
Michigan
Based
State
on the college football playoff rankings.
Michigan State does not have a loss, and they just beat what the College Football Playoff Committee decided was the number 7 team in America. Why, then, is Michigan State behind Alabama?
I said yesterday I would think really long and hard about making Michigan State the number 2 team.
I would have as well. And
this is what I'm talking about, though. This is where it's eye test. You watch Alabama and you think that's the second best team. They're not as good as Georgia, but they're the second best team.
And
it's straight eye test.
That's why
no metric.
There's talking out of both sides of your mouth here because honestly, I think if Alabama and Michigan State,
this job the committee does so incredibly hard.
It is, but it's easier for them to not. They can control some of the outrage by just telling the truth. That's what frustrates me, is when you do the Cincinnati ain't played nobody thing. Well, that's not true, because Ohio State, if that's your measure, then Ohio State hadn't played anybody either. Well, we don't look at, preconceived notions. We go into this completely blind. No, you don't, because Alabama would not be ahead of Michigan State if that's what you did. Just be honest. We think that Alabama's a better football team than Michigan State. That's what we think. Just be honest about it, because I would agree with that statement. Based on what I know about Alabama and the talent that they have and the coaching that they have, I think if they lined up and played Michigan State tomorrow, they would beat Michigan State. But what I know is Alabama lost a game to a backup quarterback, by the way. They lost a game. Michigan State has not lost a game. Michigan State has a more impressive win than that of Alabama. That's what I know.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I just don't think Michigan State's got anything in the world to complain about, sitting at number 3 in the initial rankings.
No, I'm not saying that Michigan State should be complaining.
Yeah,
but just don't lie about
it. Yeah, I get why Cincinnati is complaining. I do. Because they say, look, we've done everything you ask us to do. We scheduled two Power 5 teams, both on the road. We won them both. We can't help that we're a year late playing Indiana. You think Notre Dame's 10th in the country. But, you put me on this committee, you know what I do? I rank Cincinnati somewhere in the 6, 7, 8 range. Because I look at the fact that they only beat Navy by a touchdown. And I look at the fact that they struggled with Indiana. They won, but they struggled with Indiana. And they kind of struggled with Tulane this past week. I know that defense is pretty good. I know Desmond Ritter's pretty good. I know they run the football really, really, really well with Ford. I understand that. But I also watch games. I watch these teams, a lot of them in person. And Cincinnati's not impressive as the teams that are ranked in front of them. An Ohio State with 1 loss, an Oregon with 1 loss, an Alabama with 1 loss. They're just not.